It's time for today's episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast, recorded in front of a slightly tipsy studio audience at world-famous Champy's Fried Chicken. We will have the latest on Georgia Bulldogs football, basketball, and recruiting. Watch live and send us your questions on the 11 Alive Sports page on Facebook. Be advised this podcast is off the record and not safe for work. Also, be sure to subscribe to the UGA Sports Live Podcast on iTunes and Google Play.
Hey everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Live Podcast here at Champy's on Baxter Street. My name is Rodney DeBulsey. I'm joined by Jake Roos and former head coach Jim Donnan. The main reason you are watching the show is to get his insights and, like the, I don't want to call it a diatribe, but the breakdown that he did last week of all the early enrollees is an absolute gem. So if you didn't catch last week's episode, be sure to go back and listen to it on podcast on Podbean or Google Play, iTunes. Be sure to check that out. We have some recruiting to talk about today because we did that show the day before signing day. Mm-hmm. And we thought it might be a little uneventful. That's not the case. It's a very eventful signing day.
Shame on us. we knew better than that.
We probably had too much academia beer. We're a little drunk.
You actually knew it before anybody, which I'll give you a little love. Break it out as usual, Mr. Breaker 19. You got something for me. Hey, and with all the people talking about different things, and you came out with that about 2 minutes before that Pickens dropped it. I thought that was good. I mean, you got some serious wires, man.
You know, I get asked all the time, who's Jake talking to? Who's the sources? And I'm like, I don't even know. Because here's the thing, we have kind of a double-blind situation at UGAsports.com. People ask us, how do you break news all the time? I'm like, look, when Dash tells me according to a source, he doesn't always tell me who his source is. I don't tell them who my sources are. That way our sources are protected. And this is not it's a situation where we've developed our sources on our own. And I know that people would like to hire away Jake Roos. I know people want to hire away, Trent and Dash and guys like that. Last thing I want them to know is everybody who I'm talking to. So
hell yeah.
So we don't do that. But now we do a thing where I'll say, hey, you are about to break some huge news. You got to tell me your name's going to be on it, but my name's on the top. This better be a good source, and only once or twice I've actually pushed to find out who they were talking to, but most of the time we don't. Like Trent, I don't know who the heck Trent's talking to, but he is pretty dialed in. You break news all the time. Dash has been breaking news for 30 years. I just want to say,
I just thought that was awesome before because everybody just thought the guy was signing with Auburn.
Yeah, he hits me up. News coming. In our little group chat, I'm like, wait, there's not supposed to be any news coming. We are hours away from Seether announcing. There's not supposed to be any news coming.
Trust me, I was upset as anyone because I had to go in.
Ready.
I had to go in fair to say, I will readily admit, we know about most of these things ahead of time. We have pre-written stories ready to go when the announcements drop. This one.
The story was immaterial. Just the fact that you had to scoop.
Oh yes.
I mean, they would have. Back when I worked for ESPN, they would have killed for that.
Oh yeah. Well, now when I worked for ESPN, they said, "Hey, if you know where a kid's going, you have to report it right away, whether or not the kid's announced it or not." I'm like, no,
that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm like we're never doing that.
The guy that's the head of ESPN now, in a lot of different ways, the Norby Williamson. Was not at that time. He's more a sports center guy, but had been out of coaching for a few years, but had some contacts, and I got the word that Ron Zook was going to be fired. So I went in there and told him. I said, "Look, I'm not big on stuff like this, but I just want to tell you, Ron Zook's going to be fired this afternoon." He said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Why do you think I walked in there?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay."
Nah, I'm just messing around.
Yeah.
He said,
"Have a good one."
He said, "Okay." He said, "We'll put it on the deal." So it was, Ron had already, he knew it too. But so then about 3 days later, I went in there. I said, "Hey, Ron Zook's getting ready to take the Illinois job." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "The same guy that told me he was getting fired said he's taking Illinois." So we did that, and then, it was kind of funny there for a little while. I was kind of the scam guy, and then finally I said, "Look, I'd rather not have, according to, say, to Jim Donnan or anything. So anything else I ever said, they said that Kirk Herbstreit was saying it or somebody else. But it was good, though.
But that's like you got to protect your sources.
They love that stuff, and I think it's hard to really project everything like everybody would like. But I think being associated with you guys the last couple of years, I've seen firsthand how much you work at it, and I think it's just these fans out there that are on your site, our site, just expect, it'd be gospel if you say it. So, it's close. It's pretty – the last two recruiting classes that I've been associated with being around here last year and then this summer, this one in December and this one, it's like, Rocket Man, that was awesome the way y'all predicted everything.
I'll tell you, it's that's the scary part about this job. A lot of people like to get on the message boards or on Twitter, float the rumors around, and it's fun to do that, but it's a lot more nerve-wracking when you got your name on something and everybody's relying on you to be right about it.
But the one thing I would point out that I like that gives you more cred than some people is, even though it's bad news, you tell them.
Well, thank you.
I think that's good, and that's
usually me.
That segues into my joke of the day, which is there were these two guys that really were close, a lot like you and Roddy, but they were getting ready to kick the bucket. They were in the fourth quarter, like the old coach here, and they were really good baseball fans, and they kept talking to each other and said, "Look, whichever one of us dies first, we need a signal from the other guy that there's baseball in heaven so we can have something to look forward to." And so they said, okay, one of them's name's Robert, one of them's named John. So as fate would have it, about a week later, John passes away. And, it's a very sad day for Robert and everything. But, he's waiting for a sign. So about a month later, he hadn't heard anything, but he hears this voice during the night. He said, hey, this is John, and keeps on talking. He said, what's it like up there? He said, man, it's unbelievable. We got manicured fields that everybody we ever played with, we're playing with. Said, this is best baseball ever. He said, I got some good news and some bad news for you. He said, okay. He said, all our friends, everybody that we ever played with, it's just a perfect scenario. Nobody ever gripes. It's just a great time and everything. He said, well, that's the good news. What's the bad news? Hey, you're pitching Wednesday night.
I like that. That's a good one.
That's horrible. That's horrible.
Hey, he's coming on up there, but he's going to be throwing rockets.
I wish you could tell your 1955 joke, but we're not allowed to tell that one on the radio.
All right, let's hop in though. Let's hop in on this recruiting.
Well, I do want to say, give a quick shout out to Champions. We're here at Champions on Back Street. You notice they put the catfish plate in front of us. They put the sausage, cheese, and pickle plate in front of us. And they asked, what would you want for not for Thanksgiving, but for Valentine's Day? And I'm like, hey, give us the sausage, cheese, and pickle plate, because that is a great pairing. If you have Valentine's Day coming up, if you have someone and you have need to take them out on Valentine's Day, Champions is a great place to come.
You and your sweetie split a little basket.
Yeah, that's this is a great pairing. Hopefully you have a great pairing, and Evan has a very good Valentine's Day in 2 days. So, guys, if you're listening to this podcast later, if you're watching it live now, make a note to go out tonight, get a gift, get some flowers. If you're listening to it later in the week, if you're listening to it on Friday, you screwed up. Okay, you've missed out. So if you get a chance, also swing by Champions. And, of course, big shout-out to Athens Ford, Europe High, Academia Brewing Company, 365 Game Day, Aaron Overhead Doors. Thanks, Ryan Lucia, for watching the show. And who else? Cable East. So I do want to jump into what we were talking about last week. Well, we got a lot of questions that we want to answer. If this is a great week, if you have a question, go ahead and get it in, and we'll try to get to it this week. But we mentioned on the recruiting day, we had signing day Wednesday, the day after our show. Georgia picks up George Pickens. And I will say it was 2 weeks prior that I asked the coach, said, look, if you got a couple spots left, do you take a guy who's academically questionable? Do you take a guy at position of need? Do you take the best athlete? What do you do in that situation? And you said, take George Pickens. So,
yeah, well, I want to lead off, too, with this question here from Chris Metcalf. He says, does Coach like George Pickens?
Do I like him? Well, I mean, seriously, is he trying to bust me up here? I really feel like that it's a position of need more than anything that starts out there. And then how do you meet that need? Well, you lose Hazelwood, which was a tough loss. I mean, any way you look at it, got 50 miles from here, best player, received one of the top 2 or 3, and Pickens is one. And so by getting Pickens, you get a guy that's similar to him, a big target, maybe not quite the speed, but very similar to what we need in the red zone. We're a great team at throwing back shoulder fades. We did it 2 years ago, and we did it last year. It's something Jake feels comfortable with, and our offensive staff and Kirby feels, because it's a high percentage throw, and you still got the run factor in there if they don't load the box. So I like Pickens from a standpoint of what he can do coming into Georgia, from the standpoint of who we got to have. I mean, most of our guys aren't quite as big as, we do have some bigger guys that haven't played, like Bush and Landers. I don't know where they're going to be able to, but he'll be a good complement to Holloman. We can still use Robertson in the slot, and maybe some of these other guys. We got Blaylock coming in, but I like him. And I think he'll, the academic situation is such that he's got to make a move to get in, but it's been done before, and I think it's worth the shot to. If he doesn't, then we can place him and then get him back. So we'll see what happens there. But everybody's speculating 3 places. You said early on we're going to take 2, and that's the way it was, and then we took 2, and then we're able to get Cager on the 2020 class. So that's my take on
and
Pickens.
Eli Wolf.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The grad transfer tight end as well. I think that you really touched on something that I kind of tried to impart on people last week after the pickup happened, which was, if there was a guy who could take the sting away from losing Jaden Hazelwood in this class, it was George Pickens. I think that you get a very similar player in him, a guy with a big body, big red zone threat, can make all the catches. Go watch this kid's highlights. What's so impressive about him is not only how he uses his body, but his catch radius, man. You can just throw it anywhere around him. He can bend and contort in ways that no man his size should.
From shoestrings to tipsy top.
What you're going to hear ad nauseum the next 3 weeks with all this NFL stuff is, and these guys going to the combine, and everybody talking about these different teams, where they rate in the draft, what do they need, position need, and one after the other are going to say, hey, it fits their needs for their system. I think that's where he really comes in there strong for us from the standpoint. Big physical kid that can block on the perimeter and also be a catch radius that'll help.
So kind of like Javon Wims, basically.
Exactly. I mean, 2 years ago, that's what I said. We had Wims out there, maybe a little more zig and zag than Wims had, but good pickup, and it really changed the situation there with. I don't know what happened down the stretch there. I've heard different stories about what happened on Elam. Whether we needed the tight end more, and we didn't really press for Elam like we could. I don't know. When you only got 2, we talked about that.
Exactly.
When you only got 2, we've had that happen to us a couple years now, where and I'm sure we'd have had a great shot at that kid that signed with Auburn too. I mean, he liked us, Richards, but that happens. That's just part of the numbers game. But
that's what I'm saying. After we had Jake's hot board a couple weeks ago, that was my question. I'm like, you only have 2, and we thought maybe 3 spots at the time. And I'm like, you need defensive backs. You definitely need tight ends. You want a wide receiver. How do you factor this in? The one wide receiver you're looking at is a great talent, but, there's an academic issue there. You got a couple defensive backs and maybe even a running back. You might want to bring in, was it Mark Anthony Richards? I'm like, that's why I was asking the coach. I'm like, what do you do? And I kind of joked about the fact I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions. And I think Georgia decided rightly. Yes, I'd like to see Khair Elam in Athens, or Cross, who just signed. By the way, he just signed with Maryland. Mm-hmm. So
family decision there.
Good pick. That was your prediction. I appreciate it. But I think that you definitely needed that big body wide receiver, and if you get Pickens. Also, and this is petty, but this is very petty. I actually had someone respond to me because, we had Mike Farrell wrote a story at Rivals.com saying, is Kirby Smart now the nation's best recruiter? Mm-hmm. And remember, he has back-to-back recruiting titles.
That's just on Rivals.
Yeah, I know it's just on Rivals. But, hey, who's been doing it longer than anybody else? Rivals. Who's been more accurate than anybody else? Rivals. Does it give you an automatic first down or help you do anything? No, it doesn't. It's just our opinion. But our opinion has been pretty right on. And it's funny, the people who were saying it's only on Rivals aren't discounting all the recruiting titles Alabama won. So do you take all those away because it's only Rivals? Anyway, sorry to get on a diatribe there. But point being, someone responded to me, well, it's easier for Kirby because he has no in-state competition to recruit against. And I'm like, Kirby Smart is recruiting against Alabama, Clemson, Florida State, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah,
did a great player leave Georgia to go to Michigan? Yes. Did a great player leave Georgia to go to Ohio State? Yes. Stanford? Yes. It's just – point being, Kirby Smart went into the state of Alabama and pulled out the number 1 player in George Pickens and the number 2 player in Clay Webb. So you want to talk in-state competition. You went up against Auburn and Alabama and took an Auburn commit who had been pledged to them for 550-something days.
Yeah.
And it's a double whammy. It's like, Coach, when you have a situation where you're about to score, you fumble it, they take it back the other way, it's a 14-point swing. Not only does Auburn lose George Pickens, but they lose him to Georgia. You don't have to face him every year. He's on your side. Auburn, losing him on signing day, didn't have a chance to replace him. I'm not saying, hey, Kirby stuck it to Auburn, but, the timing of that for Georgia's sake is just fantastic, and it could not be worse for Auburn.
Yeah, no doubt.
A team you play every year.
It was tough, and I think the overview here is, and one of the reasons we have the show is the talk about the planning that went into it of going after some really stallion players like Shepard.
Worth a shot.
You bring in a guy that like him from Texas, and if you can get him, you take. He's the best available. And you talk about something that I couldn't believe. I don't know if it went down to A&M in Texas or not, like everybody says. But the night before signing date, A&M's offensive line coach announces he's going to take a job with the Cincinnati Bengals. So if there was any doubt about where that kid was going, then it's pretty well sure that he was going to Texas. But, and I don't like for any coach to leave, but if you're going to leave, you might as well wait one more day and say it. But the thing that I like, though, we had guys like him, we had Cross, we had Elam. We had some really good shots at people that if we didn't get the need situation, we took the best available player. But I think wide receiver was a need, particularly the way we signed defensive backs. We went over the ones we got here. I think wide receiver was just and my little special thing today would be the way we're evolving in college football now. It's turned into a young man's game because of 3 reasons. Number 1, the early signing date makes it easier for a kid to come in here and really show his skills and have a chance to play as a freshman more so than ever before. The fact that kids are now in the transfer portal, and 51 out of 64 guys, unbelievable, 51 out of 64 that have transferred in the last 2 years have become immediately eligible.
Yeah.
Now, that's a pretty good fact.
Wow.
And so then you add the fact, that's number 2, the transferring, it takes away from your squad. We had 2, not 1, but 2 5-star players transfer at semester that were only here for 3 months. Well, they actually were here in the summer too.
Right.
But I'm saying, so you add those early enrollees getting ready to play. You have the guys transferring and the transfer, and then you have 4 stud players leave their junior year, and it's going to be more than 4 from now on here.
Oh, no
way
doubt.
we're recruiting. So you're going to see a team transferring more to a younger squad. We'll probably have the most experienced team this year we'll ever have.
Yeah, I think that it's going
Don't
the
you
way.
agree with that?
It's going the way, I think, a little bit of college basketball in that regard.
Right, not the one and done.
No, right, not one and done. But you're seeing these young guys come in right off the bat, be impact makers, and then boom, boom, gone in 3 years. That's the ideal. If
and
you're
if they're not an impact guy, they're gone anyway. They're going somewhere else.
That's right. That's right.
That's a good point. I did want to that point. Every time we do the show, I kind of make a big deal, especially during the season, about freshmen who are playing, freshmen who made an impact. And I'm still of the old school that I'm shocked when a freshman is out there starting. And coach is always like, look, we recruited him to be good. Why are you so surprised? I'm like, because in my mind, the guys who are leading your team, the guys who are the impact players, are your seniors and juniors. But to your point, if they're really, really good, a lot of those guys have moved on. Now, granted, 2 years ago, Kirby's senior-led team took them to the national title game, but you could not have gotten there without that freshman quarterback, that freshman kicker.
Seriously, that just adds to it. The reason we probably were better than we could have been was those guys came back. You take Sony and Nick and Roquan off that and Carter off that team.
Yeah, that's not a national championship team.
So I just think we got to watch out now. From now on, how many early enrollees? We had 14. I mean, 14
insane.
out of 24. Or we're going to know what they can do here. First rattle out of the box in spring practice. A couple of them can't practice because of injury, and then you add the 10 more that all of them will be here in the summer, and you add the 2 more that grad transfers, Wolf and Cager. So we're going to have basically 12 more come in the summer to help our present squad, which, offensively we lost some firepower. We only got like 5 guys that really actually started much on the offense. You can go around that on the offensive line, but anyhow, I just want to make sure everybody understands we're trending toward. That's the new style there.
We got a lot of questions rolling in here, especially about the transfer portal and this idea of free agency coming to college football. Derek West says, what do you guys think about it hurting the depth of teams in the future potentially? And Chris Metcalf says, do you see some changes coming with the transfer portal?
Double dip.
Where it will be, where they will reel it in more and make it more difficult, or do you think that they're going to open it up more?
It's going to be opened up more. You're getting ready for when we said Justin Fields was transferring, I mean, everyone says, well, we all knew he was going to be eligible. I'm like, well, no, you didn't know that. You suspected it, and a lot of people were parroting what they heard elsewhere. The minute we discussed it on this show, I said, yes, he's going to be eligible because the NCAA is looking for any excuse when they change their basic policy saying, were you inconvenienced in school instead of, was there something major? So they've made the case a lot easier for you to become immediately eligible, and they are basically looking to avoid any sort of antitrust legislation coming down the pipe. So,
but you know what's interesting on that, Roddy, is the paradox is they had this committee that they formed, to look into the basketball and look at everything, looking about the transfer and all that didn't have anything to do with the present rules, but they were talking about having more stringent transfer where it's harder to get kids to transfer and all that. And now all of a sudden you don't even hear anything about that. It's like that thing just went off into – so they're not even looking at what they – that's what they prescribed, but they're not even looking at doing that now.
Sure. And go ahead. No, well, I think that it's a situation, too, with this where, you're getting your answer before the start of this season as to what's going to happen. Between Brew McCoy and Tate Martell, I think that those 2 guys are going to be able to tell the tape for you.
If Brew McCoy is eligible,
that's
was he there for 2 weeks?
Yeah, he was.
And you got to think that Jacob Eason's kicking himself for not actually applying.
I think he got screwed. I think they should throw him a bone, give him a free year. Why not? That's just bad timing on his part.
Well, and here's the thing: he had an injury.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I got to transfer. I had this major injury. I don't know. But my point is, the NCAA, we saw the writing on the wall. They are looking for any excuse, and if you have anything that you can point to, anything, they're going to make you immediately eligible because they're scared of getting their pantsuit off of them. When you're messing with a guy's potential earnings, they are on sound they're on sound judicial footing to sue the pants off of you. And somebody's going to come out and say, when the NCAA does not grant them that year of immediate eligibility, they're going to sue saying, look, you're preventing me from getting there. And I think they're doing whatever they can to get away from it. But I want to bring up 2 points real quick. One, if you're going to have this kind of wildness of free agency, play a year, transfer, be immediately eligible, that's going to be – you're going to take all those G5 schools. You're going to take the Middle Tennessee States. You're going to take the smaller schools and say, hey, who are your 3 best players? We're going to hit them up and see if they want to come play at Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida State. You're going to take a lot of those schools and make them into a
farm.
A
system.
Developmental league. You might get a little blowback from that. But this is something, and I was going to write about it in my 3-2-1. I never got around to doing it. The argument that, and this argument is strong with me. If the coach can leave and be immediately eligible to coach somewhere, why can't a player do the same?
So I was going to put the question to both of you. Is this good or bad for college football?
I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Now, we know that the scholarships are a one-year deal.
Yep.
So, hey, each year your scholarship is renewed. And to say that a kid, if he wants to transfer and he can't play somewhere, then it's not fair to the kid. Also, you're comparing a student to a person who has an actual job. Let's get away from that. But the school is expected, unless the player is medically disqualified, is expected to renew his scholarship until he graduates. In fact, you are penalized if all of a sudden a player does not. If he transfers, you're penalized. If he doesn't graduate, you are penalized. You have the APR thing. My point is, if a coach can transfer with no issue, get a new job, immediately eligible, and a player can't, but a coach can also be fired. You can't fire players. Yes, they have the one-year scholarship, but who is saying, like right now, if you were looking at Georgia's team, you're going, Nate McBride, you're a good special teams player, but we are not going to renew your scholarship next year.
We really need to spend that somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. You're going to Hunter. You're going to offensive lineman down. You're still a third-string guy. You've always been a third-string guy. You're a great scout team player. But if we can fire you and bring in a transfer from Houston who's doing really well, we're going to bring him in.
But here's the thing, though, and I'm just going to add to what you said. It is a one-year scholarship, but it used to be you signed a 4-year, which was a blanket deal, and you could just quit and keep your scholarship. And
really?
they came out with the deal, hey, it's a 1-year renewable as long as you make steady progress towards academic achievement, as long as you come out and you can't lose your scholarship for lack of ability, but you can lose it for not fulfilling the deal. So they just did that because so many people were getting caught up in having to take care of people that quit, and they just it was cost it wasn't cost effective. So that's why they went to the 1 year. But they have a committee on every college campus that if somebody's scholarship is taken away, that they have to go through that committee. It can't just be the athletic department takes a scholarship. So it protects the athlete a little bit from a coach that's just trying to take their scholarships. But what you said about McBride or anybody would be, hey, look, here's the situation. If you really want to play, you probably not. And I don't know that that's him. I'm just saying overall, you just say, look, you got a better shot. Maybe that's what they told Bishop. Maybe that's what they told in Gibbs' case, he was gone anyhow. But I think it's just you got roster management's critical, man. It's critical.
Oh, no, and I'm not saying that kids aren't processed, because they are. You're basically telling a kid, hey, son, you have seen that you've not developed. You've not turned into who we thought you were going to be. You've had a nagging injury. You've had whatever. Not enough for medical disqualification, but not enough to play. If you really want to play, you might need to transfer somewhere else, and guys do it, You've seen that we've recruited the last 2 signing classes. The guys at your position are better than you are. You're not going to play. And you tell them that. You're honest with them, and they transfer. And maybe it would be good if they didn't have to sit out a year. But I'm just saying the idea that I see nonstop on Twitter, Facebook, our message board at UGASports.com, if a coach can leave without any penalty, why can't the players leave? And I'm like, because you can also fire a coach without penalty. Yeah, you have to buy them out or something like that, but you can't fire players without penalty. So the players have a protection that the coaches don't. So stop using that particular argument. Now, if you want to argue it, they should be able to transfer, that's fine. Now, here's the thing. If you have a scholarship at a university, an academic one, and you transfer schools, you're not automatically guaranteed you're going to play somewhere or get a scholarship somewhere else. Doubt. So you're not guaranteed that you'll get an athletic scholarship somewhere else.
The portal helps, though, because it keeps people from going behind. You let your coaches know you're looking. And some of these guys have come back. I see a couple of Alabama kids have come back in the fold. But tell us about the tight end. I mean, before we forget it now, we signed a tight end on there. And we've too much philosophy.
What a rabbit hole. I think we could do a whole transfer portal episode.
But the whole free agency thing is something it's going to dominate the offseason. Because when you see these other guys get eligible, and we saw it with the graduate transfers, I mean, remember, they used to have to sit out. And the NCAA addressed that and said, no, graduate transfers do not have to sit out.
completely reasonable, in my opinion.
I agree.
Brett Seether, though, the other signee of Georgia's National Signing Day last Wednesday, about 1:30 p.m. He committed at Central Catholic, or Clearwater Catholic, I'm sorry about that, down there in Clearwater, Florida. Again, we talked about the need with Pickens. Definitely a need with Seether in this instance. I don't know that he was, I don't. As a 3-star prospect, a guy who kind of burst onto the scene a little bit later with his offers, is it ideal to fill that hole? No, not necessarily, but I think that it created a whole new market for that kid, after the early signing day, and suddenly he was one of the hottest in the nation. So,
what's good about a guy like that, from our standpoint, goes back to the old days where you're bringing in a guy to develop him. He's going to, he's not ready. Maybe he could be quickly. Who knows? But I mean, that's what you got to look at. Some of these guys, everybody can't be ready-made. The cake can't be baked when it comes. You got to have a situation. And I know from day one they like this kid's, and he's very classy the way he handles himself, and he'll be a big addition to the team. And we need somebody. If we're going to run 12 personnel, you can't run it with 2 tight ends, 1 back, 2 wides. You can't do it with just 3 tight ends on your team. You get 1 guy hurt, and then you're down to those 2 guys. I mean, so now we're bringing in – we lost two dang good players, Nauta and Ford, but we got Wolf, and who's definitely a guy that's played in the league, knows how to line up and play, and then we're bringing in a young guy that a lot like – Ford without a lot of experience, not quite as big, but who knows what'll happen.
Well, and you mentioned too, I think the idea of, this is one that right out of the box, these coaches at Georgia and really everywhere else, Alabama was prioritizing this kid. I mean, Nick Saban went in home with this kid. That's not something that he does for just every Jimmy and Joe. Georgia did the same thing. Penn State was doing the same thing. Michigan State.
And why? Because their junior tight end decided to go pro.
Yep, absolutely.
What was his name? Irv Smith Jr.
Irv Smith Jr. Yeah.
So hey, they didn't know they thought he was coming back, but this guy had a King Kong year, had a great playoff series, and all of a sudden everybody's saying, look, you got a chance to go high in the draft. So he leaves just like Nauta. He's looking at it too. So the coaches have to react, and just because they didn't recruit him that much early, he became a need for both teams. That's why. How about that point?
No,
I do like the fact. I like the fact that, like you said, this is a kid who's 6'5", maybe 230, needs some time to develop. Now, we talked about the game getting younger and younger, and you and I have been to 7-on-7s where we see these kids get better and better. And Kirby Smart has said for years, the players that are arriving on campus are in better shape than when he used to play.
Yeah.
They know.
I hope so.
They know a lot.
Be sure and tell Kirby that.
Well, we don't get to talk to him until March. But they said the kids know more about football. They year-round conditioning. They're in better shape. They're better prepared. But that's across the board. So if you have a guy who may be a late bloomer, a guy who wouldn't blow up as much, maybe Seether isn't ready yet. But Eli Wolf is. Now, Eli Wolf, we found out he played 350 snaps for Tennessee. Now, this isn't Ethan, his older brother, who was, big name. But this has got 350 snaps in the SEC.
Yep.
That means a lot. And he actually graded out, when we look at the Pro Football Focus things, he actually graded out higher on blocking than Isaac Nauta did.
That's true.
And I'm like, okay, that's
all
encouraging.
That's relative, though.
I know it's relative, but the fact is he is an unknown to most people, so I'm trying to give him a little bit of
do they put their name on who actually grades the guy?
Yeah.
It's graded by Roddy Nabolski, not Pro Football Focus.
I'm not sure, but you can find out who's doing the grading. Like we have.
I like to watch the tape with him one time.
Well, here's what we're gonna do: is I'm gonna reach out to Brent Rollins and maybe have him come in while Jake's over in Bangkok.
Yeah, well, way to just spoil the surprise for everybody.
Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to Thailand. I won't be here next Tuesday or the following Tuesday. So, So if you got recruiting questions,
who you covering over there?
Hey, they got a big five-star offensive lineman over there. He's a sumo right now. But
go see if you can find one of those tatted up.
I mean, you could hit me with anything.
Yeah.
You could have hit me with anything. We're going to Thailand.
You saw that guy? Did you see the guy Miami signed, the punter?
From Australia?
From Australia with all that guy was, I think he's done a stint in juvie at least.
I tell you what, if I had a kid, if I had a
California penal system,
young grandson, or anybody out there, I would teach my kid how to rugby kick.
Yeah.
Or snap. Probably both.
If you can be proficient at rugby kicking, I mean, that you can get a scholarship.
Oh, yeah.
I'm serious.
I told my son I wanted him to kick so he wouldn't get hit. Like, you want to play football, learn to kick. He doesn't want to kick, but I'm just saying this is easy.
All right, I want to transition this conversation, but before we do.
Yeah, I was going to mention, if you get a chance, swing by Athens Ford. You know, we got the Raptor out here every week, and I always want to, like, make it run over all the food and play with it, but I resist. But
once the cameras go off, folks.
If you have a chance to actually drive a Ford Raptor, you can. But I was on the Athens Ford website the other day, and I was using that 360-degree car viewer. You're able to zoom in, zoom out, and it feels like you're standing in their
in the showroom.
Showroom. And I'm looking at this incredibly looking
that's a real fun
Mustang here. This GT is just killer. I'm zooming in, zooming out on it. It's just I feel like I don't have to go out there now, but of course you want to. If you do go out there, though, I do want to point out they have $500 off a new car for any student. So there's a student discount available, $500 off. There's also a military discount, $500 off on a new vehicle. They have all these little things that they like to take care of the first responders. We know they had a discount on that earlier. Go out there, tell them your situation, talk to the sales folks out there. They're fantastic, and then if they can find a discount for you, I mean, on top of giving you a good deal, but if they find out you're a student, hey, there's a discount. Find out you're a first responder, there's a discount. Hey, military, discount. They have all sorts of stuff like that. And also, I'm looking over that, the 360 thing. I was doing it on their used inventory. There's a Ford Mustang out there, black, 22,000, 2018, 22 grand. I'm just saying, if you want a badass car, that Ford Mustang out there right now, $22,000.
Sounds like you need to put me up.
I'm just saying, and you can look at it online. You don't even have to take my word for it. You can look at it and get the 360-degree view of it, zoom in, zoom out, and all the stuff listed on it. Check them out, Athens Ford.
All right.
My wife and I gave my son a graduation present, a high school 1990 black Mustang.
Ooh, very nice. Ooh. Very nice.
Still got it in the car. No, I don't.
All right, I definitely want to get to several of these questions, but we'll do a rapid fire here toward the end because I think that we've got to touch on something that we don't normally talk about, but it is that time of year, and it was a huge piece of news yesterday. That was the commitment of Anthony Edwards, 5-star shooting guard out of Holy Spirit Prep down there in Atlanta. A guy who reclassified to be a part of the 2019 class, still the number 2 player in the class, even after reclassifying.
So he moves up and is still the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
What if he'd waited and stayed in 2020?
That wouldn't have been fair.
Can you be ahead of number 1? Can you be like 4 or 5 spots? Can you be like? Can you go into the negative number?
Depends on who's ranking you. Is it rivals or who? No, I was kidding.
No,
we're going to fire Coach Donnan.
But it was.
No, you were talking about the rankings.
No, you're right.
I mean,
no, we have him number 2.
Hey, I'm glad we got him. I mean, that's
we have him
good.
number 2. Other teams have him number 1.
We need him. We need some.
You were there.
I was. Yeah, it was.
So tell us how.
Yeah, it was a big day. Very clearly a huge deal, especially in the world of Georgia basketball, because I saw people look. I've been to a couple of basketball commitments. Obviously, I do more football stuff, but I've been to a couple of these basketball commitments. And let me tell you, there are never this many Georgia media members at these basketball commitments, ever, period.
Well, speaking of Georgia media members, it's funny how all these guys, I won't say all of them, a lot of people on the Georgia beat called our guy Dan McDonald. Dan McDonald covers basketball for Rivals and UGASports.com, and they were calling him off the record saying, hey, does Georgia really stand a chance at landing Anthony Edwards? And he would tell them, hey, look, on December 29th, I predicted him to Georgia. You got to remember, when Dan did that, people lost their mind. They thought he was drunk. They thought he was high. They thought he was addled. This guy's Twitter-pated. What the hell are you doing predicting Anthony Edwards, number 2 player in the nation, to Georgia? He doesn't stand a chance. And then, at the time, I think Georgia had lost a couple SEC games. They'd only won 1. I mean, they were not doing well, and they've only done worse. Then Tom Crean comes out with his little diatribe after the last game against Ole Miss that didn't really help the night before.
Yeah.
Point being, Dan was on this, and he's been telling me that before he made his prediction, he's written stories about how Georgia was in on Anthony Edwards, and then all these media guys start calling him up, and the first thing they do after talking to Dan is go on Twitter and say, yeah, I think Georgia stands a real good chance of landing Anthony Edwards. I'm like, You better say according to Dan McDonald, you sneaky jerk. Anyway, shout out to Dan for being ahead of the curve on this by far and letting us know, for months that Georgia stood a chance. And, again, I never thought I would see it. And even I, who, I hired Dan when I came to UGASports.
Well, you saw Caldwell Pope. We got him.
Still did not think you're going to get Anthony Edwards. I'm just like, it's when Georgia had Ashton Hagans committed.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is one of the greatest point guards I've ever seen in high school. And he's committed to Georgia. He is diehard Georgia guy. I'm like, I just don't believe this is ever going to happen. And sure enough, it didn't. So I'm with you. It's just been a while since we've seen anything.
Still got to sign. Then you're saying that Hagans didn't sign, so he didn't.
I'm just saying.
So come on,
I still want to see that letter of
gasoline on the fire.
I just want to see that LOI come in.
Okay.
The point being, this is a huge get for Tom Crean. It's you didn't hear anything about Anthony Edwards except for Dan for months. Then all of a sudden, at the last second, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, well, this is the worst kept secret in college basketball." Bull crap! You had no idea what was going on until you called Dan, and we, like you said. All the media members were there, TV stations, radio stations. It led the news because Georgia does not get
ESPN bottom line. It was on Twitter,
news.
trending on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere.
You do not. This is a big, big deal. Yes, he's a one-and-done guy. I don't think anybody thinks he's going to be around for 2 years. But when a guy of that caliber signs with your program and he says, here are the two other guys that I'm trying to bring in, if it's good enough for Anthony Edwards, it's good enough for you.
Well, and I was going to ask, Coach, obviously you're a football guy, but, the impact of a guy of this stature committing to a team, I was speaking to his coach after the commitment, and he said, I think the biggest thing this can do for Georgia is what it's going to do for him down the line.
Right. I mean, all those AAU players over there, I mean, you got to get in over there and make – hey, because there's too many good players. But these guys start out in early grades getting associated with people, and before you know it, that becomes their mentor or their handler or whatever you want to call it. And these guys move them around not only for where they might go, but what kind of shoes they wear, all that stuff. So I think this is a great imprint there in the Atlanta area. A lot like for us when we got started here and made some moves over there in some of those schools that hadn't been recruited very well by Georgia before. Buck Gottfried, we got in there with him because we'd known him from Marshall, and that helped us over there with some players. But anyhow, I think it's great for Coach. I hope that maybe it might be a situation where – team comes together a little more over what happened the other day. They got a game tonight. They can win against Texas A&M if they'll just put it all together. But the thing that worries me about our team this year is just the fact that not playing any better than we did starting the year, which is that's not being critical. It's just reality. You expect them to improve, and if you're turning the ball over a lot, then just slow it down and don't try it as much to try to run. But he's the basketball coach. I'm an ex-football coach. But I used to watch Dean Smith practice.
Well, and as you mentioned, it did not do him any favors with the comments from this weekend. And in case you were under a rock and you somehow missed them, Tom Crean essentially came out and said, the fault is on me for how this team's playing because I chose to keep these guys. And got really, really blown up, as you would expect.
As it should have been.
Even if you feel that way, you can never say that in the public eye. That's as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, boy, that's going viral.
And you could tell there is frustration on this point. They played an Ole Miss team that they could have beaten. Mm-hmm. And this was the 5th time this season you've had 20 or more turnovers. And you just can't have that. I don't care how well you're shooting the ball. And Georgia has been very hot, very cold. He does not have a lot of shooters. I mean, let's call it – this is not a team of make. Well, I'll take that back. He doesn't have a lot of makers. He's got a lot of shooters, not a lot of makers. This is a team that is – if you're a coach, it frustrates you because you've been working this in practice. You're working in practice. They come out, they go down the floor, and they run it perfectly one time. They score. The second time down, they turn it over running the same play.
And, coaching – how
do you not lose your mind?
But coaching is a lot of getting to know each other, and sometimes it works out quicker. You look at the coach at Ole Miss, they were 5-14 last year, essentially the same team, but now new coach, and they've turned it around. I mean, it happens. A Pittsburgh guy, they got a new coach up there. They're doing okay. And the one that surprised me the most is that Mack guy at Louisville. I mean, Louisville's on death row, with all the stuff that happened to them, but they're right up in the thick of things. They've beaten North Carolina twice. Once. They lost to them at home, but, so – that's enough about my interaction, but I do think it's great that we got Edwards. I think the future there gives you a lot of hope. I would think with our basketball season tickets will be unbelievable just to come see this kid. So hopefully
you have a top 20 basketball recruiting team now.
Right.
And that's not a common thing. And again, people say, well, what about Contavious Caldwell-Pope? What about Dominique Sanders? What about some of these big guys you got? I remember Carlos Strong, I think, was number 3.
Dominique Wilkins.
Dominique Wilkins. Dominique, I don't think he was number 2.
Fact checker.
Carlos
Strong was 3.
3, yeah.
Contavious was 7.
Yeah.
So this is basically your
biggest.
This
is the biggest ever. I think. I mean, but
again,
in the post-Dominique world.
Well, exactly.
Right.
So let's say in the rivals era, this is a big deal. He is a one-and-done guy, but what can you do in that 1 year? And I tweeted out, he is a program changer. And people are like, well, how can you change a program in 1 year? You're 1-11, 1-12 in the SEC. Hell, getting to 500 is a program change.
Right,
no doubt.
He's a different.
What do you want? So,
and one other shout-out that I want to give here, because this is a UGA, I just can't say enough about the women's tennis team playing for the national championship today out in Seattle. Beat number 1 ranked Stanford yesterday. They play in North Carolina today at 1 o'clock. If you want to watch it online, you can go to ITA. And you can get the live scoring or watch the video of each. They play doubles, 3 doubles play, and you get 1 point if you win 2 of them. But Jeff Wallace has got an outstanding team, very young players at certain positions, more skilled people at others. But just the fight that they've shown with beating Vanderbilt, getting over the hump, because Vandy's won the last couple of years. Yep. And our number 5 player was down love 5. 40-30, so essentially 2 set points for the match, 2 match point, and came back and won 7-5. What a comeback to win that, and for us to win 4-3. And then yesterday, same thing, we come back against Stanford, who's defending national champion. So a lot to be proud of for Georgia yesterday with the big signing of Edwards, and now our tennis team playing for the national freaking championship, man.
Yeah, it's good times around the Georgia athletic
and
programs.
Think about, look at what the track team's done, men's and women's.
Oh,
you're winning what Petros is doing out there. I know the men's team has struggled last year, but you got to know that Manny Diaz.
We got some good young players. Had a couple injuries, but we lost to Ohio State. But I think we got a match with Presbyterian today, and people should go out and watch them play. 2:30.
There you go.
Here's the thing: if you're not a fan of the other sports, you should be, because if you're a fan of Georgia, you should be a fan of all the sports. But I'll say, if you get a chance to swing by and watch Manny Diaz's team or Jeff Wallace's team or Jack Bowerly's swim team, dive team, you'll be opened up to, hey, fantastic sports, great effort. It will make you proud to be a Georgia fan or Georgia grad or Georgia alum. But those bloody coaches are some of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Just fantastic men.
They've been here a long time. They love Georgia, and they work hard. And the other shout-out I want to give is last week they had the Circle of Honor, and one of our players that I coached, Heinz Ward's got in, and 4 other people and some deserving people. John Mangan got the Hartman.
How's it taking so long to get Heinz Ward in there?
Yeah, well, John Mangan got the Hartman Award for service, and then Mr. Griffin got the Circle of Distinction, all the things that he's done for the university. But the overriding thing there, beside the fact just the ambiance of being in that room down there where they have to bring the recruits and all those video boards and all that, was just the fact all of those people getting up and saying what their degree from the University of Georgia had propelled them for, and their association here, how much it had helped them prepare for everything else. So, you had a swimmer, a track guy, and then you had Steve Weber, who was a baseball coach, and then another guy that was deceased, a really good football player. His niece stood up. But I'm just saying, a lot of good things happening in Georgia right now.
Yeah, it's the spring. We're going to be big. I do want to mention something real quick about Aaron Overhead Doors. They're a big sponsor of our podcast. They're a big sponsor of our website. I didn't know that you could do this, but you can actually get insulated garage doors.
Ooh, make it, insulate the man cave.
Right. Well, I was just thinking, you have a situation where those doors, when I worked for an overhead door company, they were always hollow, or you got the solid wood doors, and they have the glass in them. But now you can get these ones that have these ridiculous insulation ratings on them. And I guarantee you, folks at Air and Overhead Doors can tell you all about it. You put them in, change the rating of your house, like you said, your man cave, if you will. Very important. This Thursday, I'm going to be flying. We've had a death in the family. I need to go up and see my aunt up in Pembroke, Ontario. So I'm flying into Ottawa. The current temperature is 6 degrees there. So
you might want to recommend one.
I'm just saying, I don't know that.
And I bet Air and Overhead Doors would do it.
Yeah, I'm sure they. But I was actually speaking to my cousin about it. I'm like, well, how do you deal with this stuff? And he's like, oh, well, it's no big. To them, it's no big deal. And I'm like, 6 degrees to me that's the high today, And he's like, oh, well, it's only when it's minus 20, minus 30 that's a real issue. I'm like, it's 6 degrees. It's 66 here in Athens. You're going someplace it's 96. But
yeah.
Point being, it's if you want to really change out your garage door from a heating and cooling standpoint, it's ugly. You can also make it not only more attractive, but much better for your house. So you can increase the value of your home by changing out your garage door. Check out the folks at Air and Overhead Doors. Remember, free estimates, 5-star ratings of all their customer service issues. So give them a call. You can see the number behind us. You can just search it. Or go to UGASports.com and click on their ad.
We would appreciate that.
Yeah, we would appreciate that very much. Thank
all
you.
right. I want to rapid fire some questions here. Chris Metcalf with a couple of really good ones here. He says, which new player looks best on the hoof, if you've had a chance to see them yet? I personally haven't been out there to see them, but from the videos I've seen, Jermaine Johnson looks like he's ready to. He looks like he's ready to walk on the field tomorrow. So
grown man, and Nolan Smith too. I mean, you got two guys like that, twin towers.
Chris, with another good one here, he says, which player do you see as an up-and-comer, maybe not on the radar yet, kind of like Eric Stokes was last year, who's got that potential? The guy who immediately came to mind for me was Azeez Ojulari. I think that, you saw him in the bowl game start making some headway, but I think that he's got a real chance to be an impact maker next year.
I think the guy that's not on the radar that we don't talk about enough is Warren McClendon.
I could see that, yeah.
I mean, that's your offensive lineman. You pointed out that this is a kid who can play all 5 spots. How much cross-training have we seen Sam Pittman do with these guys? Yeah. So if you get a guy –
he was talking about guys that already – are you talking about guys that are already here or guys that are
well, I guess we could go either way with it, but
Warren McClendon, but I think Salyer, just from the standpoint, started late, didn't come here to the summer. The other guys had a jump start on him, and he was a lot like Davis in the fact that he started out slow, but had a lot more competition than Davis at defensive line. But I think he's going to be a guy that's going to really be challenging for a starting position in the O-line.
Yeah, I would agree. Ronnie Brown says, Coach, what commitment on signing day surprised you the most by signing with you over the course of your career? Who was the most surprising signee you ever got?
Good gracious!
I'll let you think on that one. We'll come back.
I mean that's got to be. I know there's a lot of them surprising me the wrong way. It's terrible to think you got a guy and then you don't.
You can tell us one of those too.
But I wouldn't do that.
While you're thinking on that, Brent Tucker says, has James Cook bulked up?
That was nice of Brent to come last week, too.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It was great to see him out here.
He actually took some pictures here and then posted them later, which I thought was great.
Nice.
Thanks, Brent.
He wants to know, has James Cook bulked up any so far this offseason? We need to get him on that DK Metcalf diet / routine.
Ooh, DK.
Holy cow.
Seriously, about Cook, he had a tough injury there over the holidays, hurt his foot, and during the bowl practice, and he's come back and he's working hard. These guys had a good off-season program. Scott Sinclair and his staff really put them through the rigors of developing conditioning and strength and all, but football-related strength and conditioning. So I think Cook will definitely maybe not add a lot of pounds, but maybe some bulk, where he gets a little thicker and he's definitely got the juice, man. He can go with it, and I think because of the lack of people that he'll have to work against in the slot compared to last year. Hard to put him out there when you got Cole and Terry Godwin on. But now all of a sudden, you probably look at him a little more out there.
I'm bullish on his chances to be an impact maker this year.
If you get a chance to go watch those kids warm up, look at the kids' calves. It's unreal. This kid is.
I thought you were looking at the cheerleaders during warm-ups.
They're not out there. I would.
How's their calves?
We were watching this guy warm up, and his calves are like.
They got good calves.
I mean, it's like a softball down there on a broomstick. It's like
you got to have
no wonder you can fly. I mean,
got to have a good base. That's right.
Well, I'm saying to him, he's got these little bitty ankles, and his calf is like this. I'm like, no wonder this kid can dig it and take off at a moment's notice.
I swear you do some really good work down there checking those guys out. I like that.
Brent Tucker says, did Kirby do an in-home visit with Anthony Edwards? I do think he got to spend some time with him while he was on campus. I have heard this.
I do want to address this because when you spoke to him, what did he say about why he picked Georgia? He said, I went up there on an unofficial visit, went to a game, the crowd was into it. Yeah. It made me feel like home. From the day he was hired, Tom Crean has been going out, glad-handing the people, pressing the flesh, basically campaigning to get people to come to his games. He's had a few games where they've not been, they haven't been winning, but they're still getting a lot of people into the stands. The crowd made an impact on Anthony Edwards, and he could see himself playing at Georgia. So all you Georgia fans that actually went to the game, give yourself a pat on the back. Thank you for cheering for your Dogs and being a fan even during the transition year, because that got you the number 2 player in the nation.
I think he was at the Texas game, and I was there. That was a great crowd. You were there taking pictures, but it was an unbelievable atmosphere. So what else we got here?
Brian Anthony Cook says, do you guys think Nolan Smith starts day one? I don't personally. No. I do think he'll see action day one. As soon as he's able to take the
third
field.
Series.
It won't take him long to get on the field, but very, very deep outside linebacker.
That's an unbelievable position when you just look at the stars lined up there. It looks like the Galaxy position. I mean, when you look at Anderson and then Cox and then we even got
Aziz, Grant.
It's just and then you add where you're going to play Johnson, and our defense is going to really be very good next year from a talent perspective, and this is how it blends together.
And keep your eye on Tyler Clark on the interior. Watching those little videos they put out, Tyler really looks to be stepping up as a leader in that interior.
He needs to assume that a little bit.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'd like to see him, because he's got the personality for it. He could be a big vocal guy down in the trenches.
Well, you see him making plays that just get a little more consistency. But I think reality for him was, maybe he might have thought he might be coming out this year, and he had a good year. But, I mean, when you look at it, he's got a lot of incentive to play better, to do that, to stand out. And then we got Barnett coming back. When would that be, in the fall? Or who we got that got hurt? Marshall?
Yes, David Marshall.
Marshall. Yeah. Marshall help us inside. Well, he hurt our depth not being able to play those last 7 or 8 games.
And there's a lot. That's a very good point, because there's a lot of these guys who are moving into that senior class this year on the defensive line that have a lot of incentive to play very well. Right. Julian Rochester, Michael Carter, David Marshall. I think Hawkins Muckle is still kind of lingering in that group as well. So you've got that's a position where it's tough to find guys, but this year you've got a lot of experience there and a lot of guys with a lot riding on their performance.
And we got some good guys coming in here. Of course, you got Davis here, and then we'll see how this the kid that what is it, how you pronounce it? Walthour, how he's going to respond. But I think recruiting D-line is going to be big this year. We got the one kid from over there at McEachern, right, that's coming.
Yeah, Jamil Burrows. He's a stud.
I saw where his coach is leaving.
Yeah. Going down to New Hampstead down there. He wants to be on the beach.
We actually had a story at UGASports.com. What are the 3 biggest positions at which Georgia will spend scholarships? And it's a good story by Jake this morning. If you get a chance, 27 cents a day. Swing by. Check out that story at UGASports.com. The reason I was mentioning Tyler Clark and those guys in the interior, when those guys are commanding the attention that is needed, it really helps those guys on the edge. So if you've got
plus the inside too.
Yeah. So if all of a sudden, David Marshall's back and Tyler Clark's doing what he's doing, how many times 2 years ago when Tyler Clark was, blowing up pockets, did you see Lorenzo Carter and Davin Bellamy just killing guys? He'd run him towards Davin Bellamy. Davin Bellamy knocks the ball away. All of a sudden, hey, it's a fumble. So I really like the fact that if your defensive ends can cause a little havoc, your defensive tackles, those outside linebackers are just there to make, not make tackles, but make plays. We see big plays come down. We see sacks. We see strips. We see deflections and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see what Tyler Clark can do in his senior year.
Ab Harding corrects me. Hawkins Muckle was a senior last year.
Yeah,
My apologies on that.
We got nothing. Nothing. God knows nothing.
I didn't want to correct you online. I wanted Ab to get you.
We got two more ad shout outs we definitely need to give.
I do want to mention the Academia Brewing Company because I'm sitting here knocking back this skull while well, not as fast as Jake, but I'm sorry, Coach.
Pass it.
Yeah, see, I told you this is that is your Valentine's Day special there with the sausage cheese plate. It's the best sausage in town that you can get. But if you get a chance, if you want a great meal, if you're not in the mood for chicken or pizza, swing out to Academia. They have a fantastic chef out there who can, I think, is it Tuesday? They have prime rib night.
Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday. So, yeah, you can do that tomorrow.
How do you know all this stuff?
Because he also knows that Monday's half off wing night.
That's right.
So when you get a chance, they have fantastic food up there. They actually have a chef. I know it is a brewing company. They make great beer. But if I can ever get you to remember one thing about Academia is the fact they actually have a chef out there who does fantastic creations, best scallops I've ever had in my life, and I've had them all around the world. The best place I've ever had scallops is Athens, Georgia. So that's not something that's on the menu all the time, but they change it around. So if you get a chance, swing out to Academia. And I do also want to mention last week on Friday, I went out to Europe to have lunch. They sent me a coupon for free pizza. Well, this was the week before.
Yeah, that's what you need.
Free pizza.
Every Friday.
Yeah. Well, no, it was.
I mean, it's like
it was because I was on their newsletter. I mean,
Carter's on cruise control.
If you give them if you give them your email address, they send you all sorts of things. Now, with my birthday coming up, I've already received a thing. Hey, come by for a free gelato. I'm like, oh, okay. But it was like, we haven't seen you in a while. Here's a free pizza. I'm like, okay. You saw me a week ago. But again, so I walked out. I showed him it on my phone, and I got a free bloody pizza.
I just got to ask you one question, and you got to answer it.
Nope.
Would you set yourself on fire for $1?
$2.
He'd set himself on fire for a coupon for $1.
That's pretty good. $2.
All right. I want to hit these last three questions real quick here. Hunter Drake says, what position battle are you most excited to watch play out this spring? Ooh. For me, it's a defensive back, a cornerback specifically. Who replaces DeAndre Baker? Do you get Swift, Daniel, Stokes, Daniel, Campbell? Who's going to step up and kind of become the guy at that position? Stevenson in there now? Yeah, absolutely.
You got the kid that moved from receiver to DB. It's going to be in there.
Webb. Yep.
That'll be good. That's a good answer.
That's a big one for me.
I think running back, how these younger guys going to develop, what's going to happen with Cook, what's going to happen with Zeus. Now, all of a sudden, who's going to step up there? I think that's going to be good.
For me, it's the outside linebackers. Can Walter Grant hold off Adam Anderson or Brenton Cox? Who's starting opposite him? Who's third? With Jermaine Johnson coming in, guys like that. It's just I think the outside linebacker battle is going to be one to watch.
It is, but inside too. I mean, come on. How these? So we got great position. Who's going to be the center? What's going to happen with these guards with Ben Cleveland back healthy? This is going to be a great spring practice.
Starting March 1st, Anthony Dasher will have a position preview for spring. So each day we will address who Georgia has, what they've done. I think we'll throw in maybe a prediction of how the spring is going to turn out. And then at the end, we'll see if he was right. But this should be starting March 1st. We will build up because I think about the second week of March is when we should, 16th or so, we'll see practice start.
William Turner says, can Zeus beat out DeAndre Swift?
No.
He can. I don't know that he will. I don't think that he will. I think the experience for DeAndre is so much. Look, from a talent perspective, I think he's got the ability.
Yeah. It's going to take. We won't know that till first game because we're not going to put him in any kind of situation where he even remotely. He'll do some stuff, but
He should be non-contact.
It's a good question, though. It's a good and I think Swift being a little healthier will help him, too.
Absolutely. Last one here. Ab Harding says, you guys see a breakout season for Tate Crowder this year. Tate Crowder's another one of those guys that I feel like Walter Grant, he's got a lot of guys to hold off. Now he's got a lot of experience, and he's played very well at that inside linebacker position for Georgia, but Channing Tindall is going to be there. You got to assume Nakobe Dean's knocking on the door. You got Quay Walker, who played a lot. Monty Rice, certainly. So a lot of competition for Tate Crowder.
Plus, we got Ryan Davis coming in here.
Yeah.
You got Marshall.
Yep.
Stud.
It's a stacked room.
It's going to be our defensive linebacker situation is going to be very intense, as you mentioned, outside and inside. But as I've talked about since the 1st of December, our talent level on defense is going to be quantum leap from last year to this year on just the depth and everything about it.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Tate Crowder was in, and we had that great breakdown by Dane Young about the different positions. And when he went over the inside linebackers, he showed a couple videos. There were numerous times last year where Tate Crowder, through instincts, being a former running back and just bright guy, was in the backfield or was in the position to make a big tackle for a loss and just didn't quite get the tackle. Fixing that small fundamental, getting a little bit more consistent in his tackling, will do wonders for him and his charge.
Exactly. And a lot of times when you make a position switch, it takes a little while for it to register, but the confidence level of knowing your assignments as compared to worrying about what to do and just trying to get through is going to make a lot of difference for him. There's going to be a big leap from last year to this year, just knowing your assignments. Leadership, the kids are going to look up to him. That's going to be good for Tate.
He's one of the cockiest guys on the team. I love it. It's you ask him questions he's like, why'd you ask me that? Of course we're going to do that. And I love it because he's like I said, that confidence. He was not that way 2 years ago. Hell, 2 years ago we couldn't even find him.
Yep.
So it's a good Georgia story, and I'm glad that we actually got to speak to him.
Yeah. So. By the way, shout out to everybody. I'll be off the next 2 weeks. These guys will still be here. Make sure to hit up with a bunch of recruiting
questions. How'd you get off 2 weeks, man?
That's
2 weeks.
2 weeks from the podcast. I only get 10 days. I only get 10 days of vacation every 3 years.
Is this
every 3 years per Roddy. So
who's going with you?
It's me and my dad and my grandfather.
That's a good trip, man.
So we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Tell them what you're doing.
3 Musketeers.
We're taking the train. We're going to we're flying into Bangkok. We're taking the train down to Singapore, and we're going to be in each stop for 3 days on each end. So should be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to it.
It's a fascinating trip.
You be good. Have a good trip.
Yeah. Hoping
and bring us back some cool stuff to share on the podcast.
Yep. Okay, sure.
No stories though.
No. Bring us some coupons.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
I
need a coupon for $1. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. That's all the time we have for this week's show. Big shout out to Athens Ford, of course, Aaron Overhead Doors, Your Pie, Academia Brewing Company, Cable East, 365 Game Day, and, of course, 11 Live. We didn't even mention them. We're on their website. Give them a thumbs up. Give them the like. And if you need a great source for news that's not going to be fake news or slanted, 11live.com is a great source for news. And then 11 Live Sports is the best sports coverage you can get in the state of Georgia. So give them a big shout out, and thanks to Champions for letting us have their wonderful food and place. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.
That's it for this episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast. Tune in next week for more Georgia Bulldogs news and notes from Athens.